In every war, sexual violence has been used as a tactic to instill fear, to dominate, to displace population.
The earliest documents of conflict all record sexual violence, sexual slavery, rape.
Wars have been fought on the bodies of women. Impunity was the norm, and justice the rare exception.
Their suffering was not taken seriously.
Was completely trivialized.
But why wasn't it treated with equivalent gravity by the international community? So many people would say, you will never get a Security Council resolution on rape. There was this sense that it's somehow an unseemly matter for a serious security body.
In spite of all the calls of the Security Council, that there was not much progress, that in fact it was getting worse.
Ladies and gentlemen, despite some progress in responding to sexual violence in armed conflicts, the deliberate targeting of civilians continues unabated.
What prompted its adoption was a serious concern about the systematic use of sexual violence as a tactic of war.
The role and rights of women in today's world is a critical core concern of foreign policy. It is national security.
Security Council Resolution 1888 contains very strong language on the need to end impunity. It contains very strong normative provisions. It gives the mechanism, the team of experts, and what the team of experts has to do. My role is to provide coherent and strategic leadership. My strategic priorities are implemented by the UN Action Network.
All of these tools could be brought to bear on what had been called history's greatest silence and the world's least condemned crime of war.
So we will do more to prevent violence against women and girls, but we will also do more to end the conflicts that have made women and children their primary victims.
For the first time, the Security Council saw wars through the eyes of women and girls. It brought hope for women all over the world.
The Resolution 1888 was adopted. So we're celebrating, and we walked out of the UN complex. And I remember we walked straight into a cluster of protesters holding up placards of women, pictures taken on cell phone cameras of women being raped in broad daylight for daring to peacefully protest for democracy. And I remember thinking, this chasm between the realm of high politics and the reality on the ground, that is the disconnect that this new mandate has to bridge.
Le 28 septembre 2009, c'était un lundi. Mon fils aîné était au stade. C'était juste un meeting qui devait se dérouler au stade. Et malheureusement, c'est son corps qu'on a retrouvé le 2 octobre 2009.
During a peaceful political rally, no less than 115 people were killed, and at least 109 women were brutally raped.
Alors, c'est depuis lors que je me suis engagée de recherche de vérité et surtout de pouvoir éradiquer l'impunité dans le pays. Nous sommes allés dans les familles et pour voir exactement ce qui s'est passé parce que vous savez, question de viol, c'est tellement tabou en Guinée. Dans le quartier, tu es abandonné. Dans ta famille, il y a la stigmatisation qui est là. Parce que ces femmes, elles n'ont plus de mari. Et elles se demandent comment vivre pour ne pas être stigmatisées dans la ville. Malheureusement, il n'y a pas eu de dépôt judiciaire. Cela, les avocats ont tout fait, mais ça n'a pas marché. La junte au pouvoir, ils avaient le pouvoir encore.
Security Council Resolution 1888 establishes the team of experts mandated to support national governments to strengthen rule of law, to work with national justice system, both civilian and military, and to take a very holistic approach supporting justice and accountability. It is today supporting no less than 12 countries.
Estamos en el año 2016, acabamos de llegar de La Habana. En pocos días tendré el encargo de viceministra de llegar a un acuerdo final para la terminación del conflicto con las FARC y la construcción de una paz estable y duradera.
After more than 5 decades of bloodshed,
más de 28,000 violaciones.
To put an end to 52 years of a bloody war that has left more than 220,000 people dead and millions displaced. Juan Manuel Santos and the leader of the FARC, Rodrigo Londoño.
50 changes. El tema de la violencia sexual durante el conflicto tuvo un papel central en la mesa de negociaciones. Siguiendo la tendencia internacional, la violencia sexual como crimen de violación a los derechos humanos no es amnistiable. Sus responsables no pueden recibir beneficios que los exoneren de su responsabilidad. Tienen que acudir a la justicia especial que fue creada y es primero reconocer por primera vez en el país la violencia sexual como un crimen de guerra y como una grave violación a los derechos humanos. Fue absolutamente significativo.
What this mandate represents is that international law is not an empty promise, that international law is not an empty threat.
Dans la ville de Kavumu, il y avait les viols d'enfants qui est commis par une milice qui était dirigée par un député provincial. On ne pouvait pas intenter une action en justice contre cette personne-là sans qu'on soit rassuré que ses immunités lui soient enlevées, lui soient retirées.
The TOE has been very, very instrumental in securing the investigation, prosecution, and conviction of a range of emblematic cases of warlords who thought that impunity was the rule of the game.
L'heure de l'impunité a sonné et que les auteurs peuvent être recherchés et peuvent être arrêtés.
The work in the DRC started in 2012, and the TOE is still supporting the government of Democratic Republic of Congo. And what we have seen over the past 15 years is weak legal institutions, gaps in substantive laws, but also procedure. And this is what prompted me to work on model legislative provision and guidance on investigation and prosecution, which contains state-of-the-art provisions that would allow any prosecutor to prosecute any form of sexual violence.
Hundreds of people have died in the violence, and scores more have been raped and tortured, but the perpetrators have not been brought to justice.
You cannot talk about justice and accountability in a vacuum. You really need a robust legal framework because laws influence behavior. In Central African Republic, the Office of the Prosecutor General was very prompt in establishing the Special Criminal Court, which resulted last year in a landmark judgment.
Juge de la Cour pénale spéciale déclarait les 3 accusés coupables de crimes de guerre et crimes contre l'humanité.
We have embarked on a series of partnerships. We have broadened our allies. We are today working more and more with concerned states parties and providing them support.
Thousands have been killed in Ivory Coast's 2002 civil war and the 2011 post-election violence.
Côte d'Ivoire is the only example of a national armed force that has been delisted from the annex to the annual report. They were listed initially because of patterns of sexual violence linked with the elections.
478 cas de violences sexuelles documentés.
Resolution was passed in 2015 that said if you are blacklisted for sexual violence, you can no longer contribute to UN peacekeeping. So a huge reputational risk.
Général Bakayoko, chef d'état-major, a dit que cette liste-là était une liste de la honte. C'était d'abord l'honneur de la Côte d'Ivoire. Il y a un proverbe africain qui dit que le poisson pourrit par la tête. Et donc c'est en 2013 que le ministre des Affaires étrangères a fait une déclaration d'engagement. Nous avons donc organisé des ateliers, des plaidoyers de haut niveau, comme on a dit. Mais en réalité, c'était une formation pour que les chefs comprennent ce que c'est que les violences sexuelles liées au conflit. Ensuite, les commandants d'unité, ils ont été formés de la même manière. Donc pour la troupe, c'était plus facile. Aussi, il y a la période d'observation. 2018 nous a permis de confirmer les 0 cas et donc on a été délisté en 2018.
Today, as a reflection of the significant progress towards restoring peace and security in Côte d'Ivoire.
It's often said that resolutions are passed in poetry, but they're implemented in prose. And I think moving forward, we're really looking at an era of enforcement and implementation.
I have signed 12 joint communiques and frameworks of cooperation with government, and where there is genuine political will, with adequate resources.
The year is 2017, and the conflict in Myanmar has escalated in Rakhine State. The conflict was described as a textbook case study of genocide. Killing, maiming, rape was used as a weapon of war to destroy the dignity of the community, to also displace them, because rape pushes populations very quickly. Refugees and displaced people have started to arrive in Bangladesh. The way Rohingya women arrived generated a lot of empathy within Bangladeshi population and within the government. This is something that really upset them. I can describe the role of the SRSG as someone who opened the door. She influenced the government of Bangladesh to allow services and also to create that space, have the policy framework adjust to the service provision in a safe and dignified manner. She also played a role in bringing the resources and the political will together for those who provide services on the ground. The advocacy she has carried out has resulted in accountability mechanisms, being receptive to sexual violence in conflict, and the empowerment of the survivors in different international accountability mechanisms.
With my first field missions to Cox's Bazar, I saw traumatized women who had been through the worst types of sexual violence, and yet sharing their stories. I could see that the work that we have done around shifting the shame from the victim back to the perpetrator has yielded results. I have always privileged first-hand interaction. In July of 2017, I did 3 field missions to DRC, Maiduguri, Eastern Nigeria, and South Sudan. And I met with a range of survivors, and they helped me to frame my strategic priorities for the mandate. I have made survivors my moral compass. Everything that I do for this office, I am guided by these survivors. So UN Action is the mechanism through which my strategic priorities for the mandate are implemented. And today, the network of 26 UN entities are united in enabling that survivor-centered approach. The UN Action Network has grown exponentially from 11 entities in 2017 to 26. Now more than ever before, the UN is working as one.
In 2022, the government of Ukraine, jointly with UNFPA, crafted this unique model of assistance. So everything is coordinated, and we also coordinate the efforts within the UN Action Project.
On the 3rd of May 2022, I signed a framework of cooperation with the government of Ukraine. Since then, my office and the UN system have been supporting the national authorities to implement a comprehensive plan of action.
The Survivor Relief Center is psychological support, social assistance, medical consultations, and legal aid. But when cases of conflict-related sexual violence are identified, they are approached by a GBV case manager who is ready to assess both psychological, social, and other conditions of the person and draft an individual plan. This approach, it prevents people from stigmatization, from discrimination, and from re-traumatization. Through their experiences, we hope that this will encourage other survivors to apply for services, to seek for justice, for reparations. The meaningful participation of survivors, listening to their stories, making their voices heard, validating their experiences, this is what can lead to durable working solutions.
As I reflect on my own vision for the mandate, I am very clear-eyed about the uniquely dangerous times that we are living. But at the same time, I will not allow this bleak global landscape crush my hope for this mandate. I will not allow the gains to be taken away. I owe it to the survivors.
When we mark the 15-year anniversary, it's important to recall that the measure of success is not more reports and meetings and mechanisms, but less violence, less war, less rape.
Every case of sexual violence is preventable, and it is the moral responsibility of everyone to work towards its prevention.
On est arrivé le 31 juillet 2024 pour annoncer un verdict final. On se demandait est-ce qu'on allait voir ce jour, malgré qu'on a perdu nos copains et nos copines. Mais nous, on est là.
I felt very privileged to attend the trial against the former President Addis Camara and 10 co-defendants.
For the repression, the court sentences Colonel Claude PV to lifetime imprisonment with a security period of 25 years.
It was a conviction for crime against humanity pronounced by a domestic court.
Et lorsque la sentence est tombée, je ne sais pas comment ça s'est passé, mais les larmes ont coulé. Et tout le monde a pleuré dans la salle. Et finalement, justice nous a été rendue.
You know that there is a kind of saying that full recovery is impossible without justice.
Vous continuez encore les enquêtes, et au bout du tunnel, on voit la lumière, et cette lumière-là, au lieu d'être étouffée, elle éclaire tout le monde et tout le monde voit. never give up.
Over the past 15 years, we've developed a comprehensive normative framework. We've drawn a red line. We've developed the institutional architecture. We have improved our operational reach. But what we really need in terms of the next phase is an era of enforcement, compliance, consistent and timely prosecution of these crimes, which translates ultimately into deterrence.
Over the past 15 years, we have produced very, very concrete results in a very positive way. Today, the UN is reaching out to thousands of survivors who were once invisible and inaccessible. So we have moved the needle in terms of justice and accountability. It is true that sexual violence in conflict remains underreported due to shame, stigma, fear of reprisals, amongst other reasons. But I've also observed over the years that survivors, if you provide them with an enabling environment, with the holistic services that they need for their recovery, they do break the silence. There isn't a day that I wake up, I look at myself in the mirror and I say to myself, Pramila, you have to do more for these survivors. They are my moral compass. They have a voice. I only amplify their voice.